even the most successful people have had some pretty, some pretty substantial challenges. But
Welcome to the Business Bloke podcast. Growing your business doesn't have to be hard. I am your host, Andrew Savage, a business and mindset coach with plenty of leadership tools and strategies to help you grow your life and business. Give yourself permission to get curious, lean in, and enjoy this episode. Hey, today I'm talking to Paige from Cross Country Management. Hey, Paige, welcome to the Business Bloke podcast.
thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah, hey, I'd love to hear something about yourself that most people don't actually know.
Such a good question. And I have been reflecting on this. What's something about me that most people don't know? When I was 15, I had a very significant motorbike accident. I was airlifted in the helicopter. I spent a period of time in an induced coma. And then followed up with that full recovery. Well, I think a full recovery. And then followed up with that about 10 years after with a significant car accident where a gum tree branch actually fell through the front windscreen of my car as I was driving back from a friend's place after we'd had a swim. And thankfully, I was actually put a towel and stuff on over the top and didn't just drive home in my bathers. So there's something that people didn't know about me.
Good grief. There's a bit of Evel Knievel stuff going on there.
Yeah, I've had a bit of, I've probably used up a few of my 9 lives, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting stories. And sometimes those, I guess, events can shape, how we go about life going forward from there. You probably look at things slightly differently than most.
Yeah, it's really, I did dwell on that too. And, the other part of, I guess, my story over the past few years is my dad passed away 2 years ago from terminal cancer, and he was diagnosed at 62. He survived for nearly 4 years. He was mentally determined that he was going to be the stat that beat bowel cancer. But, his attitude towards that was, you've got to make the most of every good day. And I think that's really true. And I think that reflecting on, my motor vehicle trauma, that you do have to make the most of every good day you get. And we know that good health isn't something to be taken for granted. And, we do just, have to make the most of things that we've been given.
Yeah, that's 100%. I've listened to, I think there was a book about something to do with the dying. It was a palliative care nurse who wrote a book about all of, and the common theme amongst the elderly who were passing away was they wish they'd made the most of their body when it was younger. Really fascinating stuff. So it's super important. Hey, tell us a little bit about, what you do in cross-country management. I'd love you to just share a little bit about that.
So I do quite a few things, which you've probably picked up on. There's really 3 core components to what I do at Cross Country Management. One is quite a lot of project management for farming systems groups and for industry-funded projects. It is also known as a lot of cat herding because you need to be able to herd all the cats in hopefully one direction. The other part of my business is I'm an accredited trainer. So I do a lot of ChemCert training. So I'm a ChemCert trainer. So working with farmers, public authorities, the industry to undertake their mandatory requirements. I also do some work for another registered training organisation, delivering a couple of units online for them, which have been in business and also biosecurity. So it's been really great. And then the other component, Andrew, of my business is working with clients, with private clients, and helping them put together finance applications that are done in a way that they own everything. So it's presented as though they're their documents. You could say that they're white labelled. And then I'll work with them, take the information that's in their head, put it into a bank-friendly format, and then help write their story, again, using their information. And then it's given to the client that they then give that to their financial institution. So it looks as though they have prepared it. It will wow their banker, right? It's done in a way that does, it's sophisticated. It demonstrates that business is serious, that they can clearly articulate their needs, and it's something that I actually really enjoy is working one-on-one with clients.
It's really valuable work, and it's it's a rabbit hole we could go down. Is that finance one and how to apply for finance? But I'd love to tap into that a bit. I am assuming that as a part of that, finding the finance application, that you must spend a fair bit of time with clients trying to unpack, I guess, where they're at and where they want to be in that space.
That's right, Andrew. It probably the hardest part, if it's not a person that you're familiar with, and that you say it's a new client to me, that first part of it, and I do allow 90 minutes at start, but it's often more than that. But it's really about giving me an overview of your business. So, what are the key components, a bit of the background without trying to get too much of the baggage, because we know that with family farms and with businesses, there can be that history there that is still a part of this, but it's really trying to look forwards. Sorry, excuse me. So working with them, understanding, what is their business? Are you a livestock person? Are you a broadacre cropper? Are you horticulture? Are you a services to ag business? And, what are the key components of that? And then also, what are your current needs? And then being able to then look forwards as well and to go, all right, well, we know that this season's tough, but where do you want to be? Start to flesh out that 3 to 5 year plan, because, we know that there's a lot of farming businesses that are in it for the long game. So their aim is not just to be farming themselves today, it's for their kids to potentially to be farming, and for that farm to continue. So it's about trying to look forwards as well.
So in that space, it's mostly farmers that you're working with, or is it actually a mixture of ag businesses?
Ag businesses, definitely. So definitely both. And it's been interesting because originally I thought that it would be farming businesses, but it has been services to ag as well. And perhaps they've been a forgotten part as well. And when it's businesses to ag, and I've come from an agribusiness finance where, the bank that I worked for was very agribusiness focused. And so you had that services to ag. You weren't a farmer, but your income was so reliant on the farming community that you really did fall into ag. And I think that's probably been a forgotten sector in the past, the past period of time where, do you get an agri banker because, you sell tractors or you sell livestock? Well, yes, sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't.
I think you've hit the nail on the head about it being forgotten. And we talk about farm succession a lot, and that being a real problem. I feel like one of the biggest challenges facing our industry is actually succession in the ag services space, because there are a lot of machinery companies. I'm thinking of the milking machine sort of service industry, the genetics companies, all of those that are probably in their 50s, 60s, and don't have a succession plan. And just like farmers, the boys going, oh, I'm not going to do what Dad did. That looks terrible. So we've got a bit of a challenge around actually servicing our ag sector, I think, coming up.
I think you're spot on, Andrew. And you look around any regional town, and one of my clients, their community was so lucky that he has come back to that community. So he went away, did the FIFO gig. He's a diesel mechanic. And then wanted to come back to his local town, and there was a business for sale, and so fortunate for the vendors, but also so fortunate for the community that he had the desire to come back, the desire to run that business, to be a real integral part of the community. There's another, they're not a client of mine, but I know another business that's just had a really successful transition. They were a tire company. The owners want to get out. They don't want to close it. Their money, potentially, their superannuation is potentially in that business, or what funds the next part of their lifestyle. Where do people come from? We know that running a business is challenging. Running a business can be really lonely. And even I have moments of going, maybe I should just go be an employee for somebody else, and maybe that'd just be so much easier.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like that whole thing around succession is really interesting. But I think, if you're even just starting out in business, you should have an exit strategy, right? Like, and if you get to 60 and think, oh, I probably should think about exiting, you're potentially shutting a lot of your options down. A lot of your clients you're coming to, are they being proactive in the finance space, like they're expanding or looking to increase capital or building something, or is there, is the squeeze coming on and people kind of starting to run out of cash and trying to think, I need to extend my lending and things like that? What's the common thread?
At the moment, it's probably the latter. It's probably been the working capital, dry seasons particularly through Southern Australia. And if you're feeding stock, like anyone that's feeding stock at the moment knows that the bills are pretty significant. So it has been working capital related more recently. Prior to that, it certainly was expansion, buying properties, buying businesses, doing those, fun, exciting things. We want to buy the neighbours. Yep, that's great. Or, I want to buy my dad's property, or, I want to buy a business. But yeah, more recently, it's certainly been more working capital. Some of them are carrying bigger debtor books than what you'd like to see. But, what do? You're a bit stuck.
As a part of that, I guess some people are coming to you probably quite stressed. Are you, I guess you probably by default become a bit of a coach in that space.
Yeah.
How are you helping people through that challenge? Because I guess it causes a lot of anxiety. People losing sleep at night, starting to run out of money. How long is this lending going to take? I need the money tomorrow. Yeah, how are you combating that type of conversation?
Oh, that's so true, Andrew. And the time taken for people to access funding is actually quite significant now. I've got a client at the moment. I hope he'll, have a response, and he's got an indicator. So he's had a chat with his bank manager. I think I feel fairly comfortable that, he should be okay. But I don't think he'll actually see that money for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And that's just the process. And I think this is where we need to understand that so much of banking now is a process. Now, I've been out of the finance game for a little while, but, I've still got, fairly good connections within the financial industry. And, it's not the bank manager's fault that things are taking so long. It's a process. And I can be very good at respecting process. And that's maybe, another one of my strengths is trying to work with my clients and to be able to, explain to them that it is a process. Now, that doesn't change the fact that they need money today, but it is certainly that coaching experience. I had it with another client writing a grant application actually, and this is just ridiculous. No, this is just the process. And if you want to source the money, this is just what we need to do. So you just sort of have to suck it up and get on with it. But, back to your question, I do fall into that coaching space at times. And it's also, I think, about trying to find the positives there and trying to identify that there still are positives. And that can be really hard when you're working on your business and you're the one living through it and paying out, however much it is for the next load of stock feeder, and you're watching your bank balance go down, right? You're like, oh my God, where's the end here and what happens next? So it's certainly, always trying to find some positives. And in every business, there is a positive there, right? Even in the toughest of times, we can usually find something that is a positive. And even if that's a plan that, you've reached the end and your next step is to exit, right? It's still trying to frame it in a way that it is positive, that we know the suicide rates in regional Australia are horrific. Financial pressure is certainly, one of those contributing factors, or can be a contributing factor. So it's, I think that's always really front of mind for me, is to try and, make sure my clients are okay, that yes, things are hard, but that there will still be, there's still a positive there and we can work through it. And if, every bank, maybe not every bank, I would hope that every bank there in Australia has a way of, working with their clients so that even in the worst of times, there is still that support there.
Yeah, that's right. The suicide thing is really poignant, isn't it? It's a real challenge, and sometimes people just think there's no way out. So if you can give someone a little win, just like you're saying, like somehow in amongst all of that, they can start to maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it is really frustrating. You start to, how much of a squeaky wheel do you be? Like, there is a process, like you say, and does getting angry and sending 30 emails a day speed up that process? I'm picking it doesn't. So how do you sort of combat that?
No, well, we had that just, I had one of my clients the other day. He's like, well, should I ring my bank manager? I'm like, well, do you really need to ring them? And anyway, and then we actually had a reason that he did actually need to read them. So I'm like, well, why don't you just give him a call? Because you can actually ask him this, right? And you can sort of just drop it into the conversation. And that was a really good in for him too, right? Was sort of, you don't want to be that pest, but you also want to make sure that, you know, you're being heard. And we all want to be heard, right? We all want to be, things to be acknowledged, for people to actually go, yeah, awesome, Andrew. Yep, I'm working on it. You are more than just a number. And that, yes, I am working on it. I haven't forgotten about you. And it is that fine line between, you know, do I pest you all the time, or actually do I trust that you're still working on it and things are ticking over and that things aren't being lost. And that's another part where I can, and I do help my clients, just understanding that there is a process. But if you haven't heard within, I'd hope that, most recently, if my client hasn't heard something, probably by the end of next week, leading into the week after, I would be encouraging him to give their bank manager a call just to say, hey, is everything okay? Where are we up to? Because the last thing you want is somebody to be sitting on a piece of information that they need that holds the whole process up for longer. And that's where you need, somebody that understands it so that they can kind of coach you through it.
Yes, I guess in your big business picture, whether it's, trying to buy a bit of capital for a factory or you've got a load of stock feed coming, you maybe set yourself like little time stamps, I suppose, in a process to go, hey, I'm hoping to get that funding in 4 weeks. Yeah. I'll send an email here, and here if I haven't heard, so that you're not waking up every morning and panicking about it, I guess. Because you feel like you're stuck in this big corporate monster, don't you?
And you totally are. You totally are stuck in a corporate monster. And it's, for me, often the best ones that I can work with are actually when you've got a fair bit of time and you can step it back, so you can actually work, from your end point and then go, all right, well, we need to be doing this now and to be doing this then. And, that's the real benefit of when you've got time and you can plan, right? And you can look out and go, all right, over the next 12 months, this is what we need to do. So we need to do this by this time, this by this time. And things do pop up. We know that we get unexpected surprises, but I think in a business sense, if you can plan it out and you've given yourself plenty of time, then that's when we have the best results.
And that's about control, because we can't focus on what we can't control. So we can't control the process in the bank, but we can control our response and, that sort of planning sequence. I think that's really important.
Yep.
When people come to you, whether it's sort of proactive or reactive, like they're in a bit of trouble or they're growing or whatever it might be, what are some common things, I guess, you see around planning? Like I've heard a saying to say, looking at your bank account is wondering where your money all went, but budgeting is planning on where your money's going. So there are two people who would constantly have a foot in both courts. You've got your budgeters and your planners and people who are really good. And then you've got the other people, and I've been in this boat sometimes, where the bank has asked you a question or someone's asked you a question about something and you don't know the answer to it, and you feel really stupid because it's a basic fundamental of your business to know your numbers.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you come across in that space.
Right. For as long as I've had cross-country management and have been working in this space, it is about knowing your numbers. Anybody that's followed me on socials for a while knows that, knowing your numbers is a real key, right? And if you don't know your numbers, because some people are not number people, right? Some people, it's just not them. They're big picture. They're awesome at other stuff. So it's knowing your strengths and also then knowing, those areas that you might need extra support. And if you're not a number person, that's where somebody, who is a numbers person, now whether it's me, whether it's your accountant, whoever it might be, but somebody who can work with you to go, all right, well, these are the things that we sort of need to know because they're the real drivers of your business. And one of my clients, I asked them just recently, I said, well, how much have you spent on stock feed between 1st of January and now? And he's like, well, I don't really know. I said, well, go and work it out and let me know. And he sent me a text message and he's like, oh, wow, I've spent this much money. And he's like, no wonder I've got no money. But it wasn't until he could actually step it back and take a bit of time. And that's the other part too, right? It's about taking the time. We're so busy running a business. How many times do we hear, you're working in your business, not on your business? And that's why, whether it's being off site, whether it's, investing in it, even if it's just a morning, right? A day seems pretty extravagant for a lot of business owners to go, I'm just going to spend a whole day working on my business when I've got sheep to feed or cattle to feed or customers to serve. But if you can actually remove yourself from that real, intense being in the business then you can work through and go, all right, well, now I can see that I've spent $250,000 on stock feed. Wowzers, that's where all my money went. No wonder, my bank account's depleted. But then it's also going, all right, well, if that's what I've spent now, what do I need to spend to get me through to the rest of the season and to the time that hopefully we'll have grass on the ground? And this is now with the benefit of wisdom that I can really truly appreciate and empathise with the dairy farmers who were from New Zealand, particularly, who came over to Australia when I was in Shepparton and at the end of the 2008 drought. And now it is that, benefit of age, right? Or benefit of perhaps, just learning as we do. But I can understand why people have run up really big stock bills, because you need to feed your sheep. You don't really, if or your cattle, or, whatever you're feeding, and you go, oh, I just need to pay the bills. And you can't stop because you're in that flight or flight mode as well, where no, I've got to do this. And if I don't feed my stock, then they'll die, or they'll have reduced reproductive, statistics. This is a very technical term. They'll have reduced fertility. I won't have something to sell next year. My milk check will go down. We know what's happened to the sheep price over the past 6, 9, 12 months. Nobody wants to be sending sheep to the market or to the abs getting paid $3.50, and then you end up down that other rabbit hole spiral, right? So if to bring it back to, your question, it really is about understanding your numbers and being able to do that in a way that's not threatening and it's not confronting. It is really confronting. I have it in my own business where, only this week it's end of financial year. It's a good time to be looking at, what we've achieved. I go, wow, even go, wow, where did my money go? And then when you can actually work it out, you're like, well, I paid tax and I paid this and I paid school fees and, I've paid business expenses. But you still need to be able to actually work through that and to be able to do it in a way that you don't feel stupid. That would be my, it makes me really sad when people feel stupid for not understanding their numbers, because it just makes me feel really sad. I have clients, say to me, I was like, I feel really stupid. Well, you're not stupid at all. This is just not a part of your business that you've had to work on it. And you can learn it, or you can engage with the right people to help you.
Yeah, that's right. That growth is outside the comfort zone. And I see a lot, I guess she does the books and he's just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know how to log on to my internet banking. But I would challenge those people to actually, hey, mate, sit outside your comfort zone. Just even over a coffee, have a conversation once a fortnight. Because I bet you he knows how many litres per hour his tractor burns, but doesn't know how much cash they've just burnt through. And as sure as eggs, ag is very cyclical. We have 10-year cycles, and then we have very short volatile cycles within a season. So you can do your budget. Say, today's a really poignant time. It's the 2nd of July, and you can plan for your year. But what we do know is that budget will go pear-shaped, who knows what the spring's going to bring, or the summer. So I guess if we can kind of look at patterns around a 10-year cycle and go, well, we could expect this, we could expect that, and let's sit down and budget, but let's make sure that when we feel like we've had 2 weeks without rain, let's have another conversation about it.
Yeah.
And say, hey, do we need that tractor, or are we thinking this dry period might, carry on? So really start to bring numbers into your life.
You're spot on, Andrea. And also, we do need to be remembering that it is a cycle. We will get dry seasons, we'll get good seasons. It's what you do in those good seasons that are the real defining factor, right? Where, the most successful people that I know, or that they're the ones that have had that big picture view. Now, they have been, opportunistic. They've been fortunate. They've had losses as well. Let's, never forget that even the most successful people have had some pretty substantial challenges. But it's what you do in those good seasons that really do set you up for those more challenging seasons. Or, a client that we've been working with recently where, we've prepared his budget, he's happy with his budget, but we know that spring, it all rests on, getting some grass, which he should, but it's also resting on a livestock price, figure that is conservative, but again, you're at the mercy of a market that you really can't influence. If you're sending any sort of, or you're sending sheep to the abattoirs, we know that, yes, we could maybe get a forward contract, but we're still at the mercy of what they want to pay.
I love your comment about, some of the most successful people in the world, anywhere, sports people, rich people, or whatever, have been rock bottom. Like they have hit so hard, and it has forced them to get really resourceful. And I was actually with a client the other day, and they are in a bit of strife. And I said, I'm like so excited for you guys. You're so lucky that you've got to this terrible position, because you're never going to be here again, and you're going to learn so much from this. It's actually going to propel you forward. In 5 years' time, you'll actually be thankful for being in what now seems like the worst position of your life. And I would give that advice to anyone, whether you're a farmer or a business owner or whatever, and things are really doom and gloom and you think there's no way out. Just think how lucky you are that you can now get super resourceful to get your way out of it. And you're going to learn so much from it and actually be better off than, you look at these people who win lotto and they're broke and bankrupt within a few years, aren't they? And they're miserable. And so I feel like it's real opportunity, if you're in that space right now, to seek help and reach out and get really resourceful about how you can find your way through it.
And there is always hope out there, right? And, I don't know, Andrew, if you follow the Getting the Crop In Facebook group, and now it's Growing the Crop, and it changes during the year. There was an anonymous question in there the other day that somebody was, I presume, in a really tricky spot. They put a post up there about, has anybody ever regretted selling their farm? And it sounded as though there was a lot of pressure there. And, and a few of us wrote on there and just said, at the end of the day, you need to do what's right for you. And a farm is only a farm. We all get sentimentally attached to a farm. I won't bore you with how long my family farm has been in our family. But at the end of the day, it's a piece of land. And it is hard because you won't probably ever buy it back, right? So if that's the choice you make, then you work through the pros and the cons and you sit down and go, all right, I know some really amazing people who have bought and traded farms and they had no sentimental attachment to a farm. And I think it's really incredible where you just go, no, it's actually just a means to an end. And there is always opportunity out there. And it's just about, opening yourself up, being a bit vulnerable and finding somebody that you trust that you can actually talk to. And now, whether that's you, whether it's me, whether it's Lifeline, whether it's your bank, whoever it is that you've got a good relationship with, that they're the most important things. And they're hard, right? It's hard to say, actually, I'm not having a very good day and I really feel like I'm stupid because I feel my numbers, or, I've got no other option. But there is always, an option out there.
That's right, yeah. And like I say, if you're in that spot and you don't know your numbers, then there's your first opportunity, right? It's just what can I shift now to start making a difference. So,
what are the expenses that I can cut? All right, well, actually, I don't need to do this. It's always really interesting talking to people, and that it's particularly husband and wife about, one of them might be very into machinery and the other one just sees the expense coming out of their account. There's pros and cons to trading and regularly upgrading your machinery, right? But maybe, it's one of those things we go, all right, well, actually, no, I can't do this year. I can't have that new tractor. But what can I do to make sure that my life is as easy as I can? Is I can get it serviced. And I can get it serviced before I actually need it. And this is where that planning comes back to it as well. Okay, all right, well, a lot of people have now finished seeding. The next key part might be hay season. Well, where's my hay gear? And when am I going to get to that service? And how does that fit into my cash flow? And, what conversations am I going to be having then? And then let's look that a little bit further out and go, all right, well, how's your header? And, hopefully a lot of people get a really great harvest this year, but, it's about working through those one step at a time. And I think that's the other part too, is breaking it down so that it's not everything at once. And you don't have to do your whole cash flow at once. You just have to do those key drivers. What's your income? What are your biggest expenses? And then fill in the gaps around that rather than go, all right, well, I have to do this whole thing from start to finish in the next 2 hours, because for a lot of people, myself included, that can just seem really overwhelming. And then it's just even harder to make a start.
Yeah, no, that's really cool advice. Break it into smaller pieces and make it manageable, and catch up every week for the next 6 weeks if you have to.
Yep, that's exactly it, right? Just do one piece at a time and go, all right, actually. And then, as we find, if we have a quick win, we get on that bit of a roll and we get momentum as well. And then, your kids are walking the door, or, something else has happened and, you've got to park it. But often it's just starting that's the hardest part.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, it's been a really cool conversation. I'd love to know, have you got one sort of key takeaway that you would love someone to come away with from this conversation? It's been really, really valuable.
One takeaway. I think it comes back to knowing your numbers, Andrew. You really do, work through your numbers, understand, we are the 2nd of July now. We're, new financial year. I feel like it's this real, it's these little moments where you go, it's a really great chart for a reset. I think we should all reflect on what we've done as well. And, so many people have done really amazing things. And even if that is nothing other than keeping your livestock alive and, and you're lambing or calving or whatever it might be, or whether it's keeping the doors of your machinery business open and, recognizing that we've all had something good happen. But, one piece of advice is really, understand your numbers, understand your key drivers, and break it down. If it's too hard to do 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, just do 3 months. Just work in that sort of 60 to 90 day cycle. And we know that farming is cyclical, or business is cyclical. So understand your numbers, but just understand the key ones. So, what's your income? What are your biggest expenses? And then work your way from there.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked about sort of your wins, eh? Even if it's real crappy, you'll find a win in there somewhere that you can celebrate. Celebration is super important. So you look back, celebrate those wins, and plan forward in a sustainable fashion. Really cool advice. Tony Robbins says, I love charts and charts love me. And that's quite a cool mantra to maybe you could put your own spin on that. Where do people connect with you? How does someone see a little bit more about what you're up to?
So I am a bit active on Instagram. So you can find me at Instagram at Cross Country Management. You can find me on my website at www.crosscountrymanagement.com.au. I am always one to offer my phone number, so you can find my number on there. I'm not afraid of having a phone conversation. So, I'm always really happy to pick up the call, and that's, certainly been a strength of mine as well, is, where there is a need or where it was so much better to have a conversation, let's just pick up the phone, jump into a Zoom, whatever it might be, rather than fire off 50 million emails that just get lost and we don't get anywhere. So, they're the main places that you can find me.
Death by chat sequence. That's really cool. I love that. That's people reach out to you. That's really neat. And I'll throw some of that in the show notes as well. If people have some questions for you, that'd be fantastic. You've been super generous with your time, and I want to thank you heaps for offering a lot of value, especially in that finance space. It's really important. I also say that we were going to pre-frame that it's, we're not giving financial advice, but it is really just what we see and what we hear out there is what we talk about on this show.
Absolutely. It is all being general advice. That's a very good disclaimer to end on.
That's right. CYA, cover your ass. I learned that one in the police force. So, no, it's really cool. But everyone should just, reach out, whether it's me or whether it's you, especially if you're feeling a bit grim at the moment. So really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
If you've got this far, you've reached the end of the episode, or you've left your car running. I really hope you got something out of this episode of the Business Bloke podcast, and maybe you've got something to take away to apply to your own business. I'm a pretty friendly bloke, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just look up Andrew Savage, or on Instagram. The handle is The Business Bloke. Thanks for listening. Reach out, and we'll catch up with you soon. Good one. Cheers.